did you have one or more appointments with Ms. Harris, or were you helping multiple patients during her visits?
With Ms. Harris, they would always make sure she was one-on-one with me. There may be an overlap. That was the end. For the most part, she was one-on-one because of her condition.
I guess my follow-up to that is there were times where you were seeing more than one patient.
That I recall, there could have been an overlap. A patient was on the Eastern machine that did not need me to attend to them, but I was always one-on-one with her while we were doing exercises and gait training.
Okay.
Just to follow this up, you tell the jury what ESTEM is?
ESTEM is the electric stimulation. You put the on the patient, you put it to the intensity that they can handle, you turn the machine on, and you wait till it shuts off, and then it packs off.
So you're saying there could have been times when there was overlap with patients?
Correct.
And the new patient coming in would start with ESTEM?
Usually, a lot of times, our patients would end with the ESTEM to help with patients. Every case is different, but if there was an overlap, it was because the patient could be unattended, but I had my full attention to Ms. Karanda.
So, assuming that's the situation, which patient would you have been with? Ms. Harris or the ESTEM patient?
Ms. Harris.
Thank you, ma'am.
No other questions?
Thank you. You may step down.
This time, Your Honor, the defense would like to read the evidentiary affidavit of Tony Burdick.
Okay.
That's at tab 18 of the exhibit.
Affidavit of G. Anthony Burdick, Squire. I, G. Anthony Burdick, propose to state as follows. I am an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Indiana. My law office is located in Valparaiso, Indiana. I have been a practicing attorney for more than 25 years, and I regularly serve as a panel chairman of the medical review panels in this state. By agreement of the parties, I serve as chairman of the medical review panel that consider the medical malpractice claims of Karanda Harris against St. Mary Medical Center in this case. Mrs. Harris's medical malpractice claims against St. Mary Medical Center were required by law to be presented to a medical review panel consisting of an attorney, chairman, and 3 appropriate health care providers selected by the parties, and for the panel to render an expert opinion about the merits of her medical malpractice claims before the case is tried in court. The medical review panel did not consider Mrs. Harris's premises liability claim in this case. It did not have that, and it did not have that duty or right to do so under Indiana law. The healthcare providers that served on the medical review panel that considered this case were Scott F. Becker, MD of Mishawaka, Indiana, Kelly Goby, PT of Hauptstadt, Indiana, and Austin J. Hefner, PT, MS of Bloomington, Indiana. They were chosen by the parties of the striking process that prevents either party from unilaterally controlling the selection of the panel members. My duties as panel chairman include coordinating the distribution of the parties' written evidence to the panel members, chairing the meeting at which the panel members discuss the evidence in this case, advising the panel members regarding the law applicable to the medical malpractice claims under their consideration, and preparing the written document reflecting their expert opinions in this matter. As panel chairman, I do not have the right by law to render an opinion on the merits of this case, and I did not do so in this case. At the beginning of the case, each of the medical review panel members took an oath under penalties of perjury to consider the evidence submitted by the parties and render an opinion without being biased on the evidence. In consideration of this case, the medical review panel reviewed written submissions and arguments by the parties, including Mrs. Harris's proposed complaint against St. Mary Medical Center, pertinent medical records regarding Mrs. Harris, affidavits of certain witnesses, and photographs of the outpatient rehabilitation clinic for Mrs. Harris. Under the panel procedure established by law, live witnesses do not appear to testify before the medical review panel. The medical review panel members then discuss the merits of the case by conference call under my direction as panel chairman to arrive at an opinion about Mrs. Harris's medical malpractice charges. Under the law of Indiana, the medical review panel can render one or more of the following expert opinions in a medical malpractice case: that the evidence supports the conclusion that defendant failed to comply with the applicable standard of care as charged in the proposed complaint, that the evidence does not support the conclusion that defendant failed to comply with the appropriate standard of care as charged in the proposed complaint, that there is a material issue of fact not requiring an expert opinion bearing on liability with a court or jury, and or that the conduct complained of was or was not a factor in the resultant damages. The medical review panel does not have the right by law to resolve facts that are in dispute by the parties upon which the parties have offered conflicting evidence. In this case, the medical review panel members unanimously found that there is a material issue of fact presented by the parties' evidence, not requiring expert opinion, that there is a liability for the court or jury. A true and correct copy of the medical review panel's opinion in this case follows this affidavit. By agreement of the parties, this affidavit is to be utilized as evidence in the jury trial of this matter commencing on August 18, 2014, removing my personal appearance and testimony in court. I have personal knowledge of the facts and matters stated in this affidavit.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense would like to call Austin Hefner. Everybody get it?
Ron, where's Ron? Where's he at? Raise your right hand and be sworn. You solemnly swear to affirm, tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Would you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Austin Hefner.
What is your occupation, Mr. Hefner?
I'm a physical therapist.
When were you first licensed as a physical therapist?
2007,
Can you tell the court, the jury, what state you're licensed in?
Indiana.
Now, can you briefly describe for the jury your education and training to become a physical therapist?
I went to the University of Evansville and I got my Bachelor's of Science in Physical Therapy and a Master's in Physical Therapy there. I just recently completed a Master's in Business Administration and Healthcare through Indiana Wesleyan University.
Sir, are you currently affiliated with any particular physical therapy practice?
I work for Premier Healthcare in Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, with the Hoosiers?
One of the Hoosiers.
Just wanted to make sure we established that. And can you tell the jury what positions you hold at Premier Healthcare?
I'm a physical therapist and the director of the Premier Therapy Department.
Can you describe for the jury the kind of things you do as a physical therapist?
As a therapist, we are an outpatient clinic, so we see patients, ranging in all ages, all different impairment levels, young, old, head to toe. We work a lot with low back issues, sports injuries, work injuries, a little bit of anything and everything.
And what are your duties as director of Premier Therapy?
As the director, I manage the therapy staff, some of the scheduling staff as well. I work directly with the physician owners to ensure that we are operating efficiently and maximizing budgets and profits, all that good stuff.
So this facility is owned by physicians?
Yes.
You report to those physicians?
Yes.
Those physicians, do they know what you're doing at their facility?
Yes.
Okay. Have you worked at any other physical therapy facilities?
Yes, I completed my initial clinical rotation at a hospital in Terre Haute. I then did a rotation through community hospital in Indianapolis. I did a rotation up here around Portage, Valparaiso area. I also spent 2 months in Melbourne, Australia, working in a hospital there before I graduated. After graduation, I worked at a healthcare facility in Indianapolis. It was a skilled nursing facility, so the patients were there. They stayed there. They were either there for short-term for rehab to go home, or some of them were long-term residents. For probably the past 5.5 years, I've worked as a therapist in an outpatient clinic in Bloomington, initially at Physiotherapy Associates, and then in 2010 I moved to the location I am now.
Sir, your curriculum vitae is already in evidence. The benefit of the jury in that book, towards the end somewhere, I don't remember the tab number. Does that curriculum vitae accurately reflect your professional training and experience?
Yes, it does. It's updated.
The jury can rely upon that in kind of getting a better idea of who you are.
Absolutely.
Now, a moment ago you kind of described the kinds of patients that you see. I think you said you have young and old and a mixture of things. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you describe the kinds of therapies that you provide to patients at your facility?
We do, again, we do everything. We use modalities such as ultrasound, iontophoresis to help manage pain and inflammation. For spine patients, we use lumbar or cervical traction to try to decompress through spine relief, possibly nerve impingement or compressed discs. We focus on manual techniques and exercise, gait training, where the therapist uses their expertise to correct impairments that the patients may have.
Sir, in your experience, have you treated patients with physical deficits that cause problems?
Yes.
Have you treated patients, post-operative patients?
Yes.
Have you treated patients with a dysfunctional sciatic nerve?
Yes, quite frequently.
Have you treated patients with rock foot?
Yes, on occasion.
Can you tell the jury approximately how many patient visits do you have in your practice?
Probably close to 2,200. That's just with me, counting visits per year.
Okay. Now, you served on the medical review panel that looked at the malpractice claim in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And serving on that panel, did you familiarize yourself with Mrs. Harris' medical history and her conditions both before and during the therapy in question?
Yes.
You treated patients with a history of impairments similar to that Mrs. Harris had?
Yes.
And you were a practicing physical therapist in 2009 when this accident occurred?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the professional standard of care that was applicable to physical therapists working in 2009?
Absolutely.
You're under subpoena here to be here today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Who put you under subpoena?
You do.
Have you ever previously reviewed a medical legal case for me or my law firm as an expert?
No, this is my first experience.
Let's try and make it pleasant. Did you know me before this case?
No.
Do you have any past or present affiliation with St. Mary Medical Center?
No.
Do you have any past or present relationship with any of the therapists involved in this case, such as Tracy Goen or Amber Kimberly?
No, I have never met any of them.
And I think you just said you've never testified before. Is that correct?
Never.
Are you being compensated for your time here today?
Yes.
So you're not doing this for free?
Nope.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what our range is in terms of your compensation?
Basically, it is at or above what my typical salary rate would be if I were in the clinic today.
Now, was the medical review panel provided documents and materials to review in connection with its consideration of the case?
Yes.
Describe to the jury the kinds of things you guys look at.
We went over a lot of we had the medical records from her surgery. We had pages and pages of physical therapy notes, documentation from St. Mary's, covering the course of her treatment. think all 95 visits or so. There was also sworn affidavits from, I believe, several of the therapists at the clinic.
Did you look at the photographs?
Yes,
And as part of the panel process, did you review those things?
yes.
Did you have depositions at the time of the panel met?
Not at that time, no.
Now, we have the affidavit of Mr. Burdick, who was the panel chairman. Do you call him?
Yes,
And he has testified that the other panelists on the panel were Dr. Scott F. Brecker of Mishawaka and a therapist named Kelly Godey of someplace called Hopstock, Indiana. I have no idea where that is. Did you know either one of these people?
no, I did not.
Can you describe to the jury what the medical review panel did to reach its opinion?
Individually, we reviewed the information that was given to us. Then we came together on a conference call, never in person but over the phone, led by the chairman, Mr. Burdick, who kind of moderated the discussion for us so that we could discuss the information we were given and determine whether any professional standards had been breached in this situation.
And did Mr. Burdick, as the panel chairman, explain to you the law applicable to your duties as a panelist?
Yes, he did.
Can you please project Mr. Hefner's opinion, tab 18? You can highlight it, or enlarge it. There we go. Okay. Can you see that? You can look at it at tab 18, whichever is better for you. Is that your opinion, sir?
Yes,
That's the opinion you rendered in this case.
this is.
Was that the unanimous opinion of all the panel therapists?
Yes,
Or all
it
the
is.
panel members?
It was unanimous.
Okay. Do you agree with the proposition that the panel did not decide the merits of the medical malpractice claim? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you explain to the jury why you didn't decide the merits?
Basically, it just came down to a dispute on the facts. One side was saying one thing, one side was saying the other, and it wasn't our duty to determine who was right or who was wrong. It was just to determine whether or not an issue had been breached in the professional care.
So, was your understanding that under the law, that was to be left to the jury to decide?
Yes,
And you guys didn't attempt to decide that?
we did not.
Now, since the panel rendered that opinion, have I asked you to review additional information that was not available to you at that time?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what I've asked you to look at?
I have since begun giving depositions of Ms. Harris and then the therapist from St. Mary's Medical Center.
Include were you a doctor?
Yes.
Amber Kimber?
Yes.
Sashi Brambach?
Yes.
Did you review a deposition of Brooke Yaw?
Yes, I did.
Did you review a deposition of Barbara Garland?
Yes.
Did you find this additional information to be helpful in your understanding of the facts of the case?
Yes.
Now, Mrs. Harris has testified that the therapist told her late in her therapy program, when you come in, go out on the track and start walking laps alone, or go on a bike and do some work until we're ready for it. Something to that effect. Are you familiar with that claim?
Yes.
Based on your review of all the materials, was Mrs. Harris on October 1, 2009 the kind of patient that you would have walk alone in your facility using only a quad cane?
With the level of impairment she presented at that time, I would not have allowed her to walk without a therapist supervision in my clinic.
Okay. Would you expect that a reasonable and competent physical therapist or physical therapy assistant would have a patient like Mrs. Harris go out and ambulate in a physical therapy environment alone without supervision?
I would not expect that.
jury's heard evidence that it was the customary practice at the clinic in 08 and 09 to tell patients, sign in, go in the gym, and wait for the therapist to be available. Are you familiar with that evidence?
Yes.
In your experience, how common is it for PT patients to be given that kind of instruction?
Very common. There's actually a sign in my clinic that says, please have a seat and wait for your therapist.
Why is that a common instruction given to patients?
For safety, basically, so that the therapist is present when a patient begins treatment, so that there's no injury that leads to equipment or a fall within the clinic.
Pardon me, sir, I'm rummaging around because I lost something in 92 years. When you give a therapy patient instructions, do you expect that patient to follow the instructions?
It's in their best interest to, yes.
And is it reasonable for a physical therapist or a physical therapy assistant to expect that the patient will follow instructions?
Yes.
Assuming that Mrs. Harris was instructed before this accident to go wait for her therapist, and she wasn't given any contrary instructions beforehand, do you have an opinion whether that practice complies with the standard of care?
That practice would comply with the standard of care, yes.
In your experience, sir, how common is it for patients with significant gait deficits, like Mrs. Harris had, to be allowed to ambulate without supervision or therapy assistance, without assistance?
That would not be common at all.
Why is that?
And then it comes back to the safety of the patient and just the liability present with that situation.
Now, aside from the risk to the patient's safety, is there any reason that you can think of as to why the average competent physical therapist wouldn't send a patient out to walk around alone in the therapy environment?
From a business management aspect, time spent, a patient spent walking alone in the clinic would not be considered a skilled service by the therapist, so therefore it would not be billable. It would be wasted time within the clinic. That is something the patient can do on her own at the YMCA, at home, at the mall, or even in the neighborhood. There is no reason to come to therapy to do that activity.
Now, are you familiar with the claim by Mrs. Harris the presence of the rug on the track wasn't a reasonably dangerous hazard?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar with the photographs of the rug?
Yes.
And that's the rug.
Looks like it.
Okay. Have you seen rugs like that before?
Yep.
Can you tell the jury where you've seen them?
Stores, courtrooms. We have similar rugs coming in the doors at my clinic.
And why do you have rugs in your clinic?
So that as patients enter from the outside, they have the opportunity to wipe off snow, moisture, water from mud from their shoes so they don't slip on any wet surface.
In your treatment area, sir, do you have a door that leads directly to the outside?
Yes, there is.
Can you tell the jury who uses that door?
The door itself is marked staff entrance. Occasionally you get a stray patient who wanders in the wrong door, but mostly it's staff, maintenance people come in and out, FedEx delivery people, our linen delivery services come in and out that way frequently.
So is it fair to say you expect persons other than patients to be in the treatment area?
On occasion, yeah.
Now, as the manager of a physical therapy facility, do you feel an obligation to make the premises safe for those people?
Absolutely.
Do you have a man at the door at that location?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what Premier Therapy's facility was like?
Our facility is, the facility that I work out of is basically a house that we have converted into an office space and a treatment area. So from the patient entrance, you walk in with the front door of the home, and there is a small waiting area. Then there is an adjacent larger treatment area with a room off to the side, a private room for private consultation with patients. in the back of the room, in the back of the building, there is like a break room and utility room in the bathroom.
Do you have a walking track?
No, we do not have a walking track.
So if you have a patient that needs gait training, that needs to do some walking, where do you do that?
Weather permitting, I usually just take them outside to the sidewalk.
Okay. Could you describe the sidewalk that you use for the children?
The sidewalk itself is in good condition, but there is a slight slope to it. So as you're walking from the clinic out to the parking lot, there's a slight downward slope to the sidewalk.
Do you consider that to be unreasonably dangerous for patients with gait problems?
Not if I'm with the patient.
Why not?
I would be there with the LakeCo and the patient to ensure that they do not lose their balance in a way that would cause a fall.
Do you expect physical therapy patients to encounter those kinds of things in their everyday life, such as down the slope of the sidewalk?
Absolutely.
Do you expect them to encounter rugs like this in public places?
Yes.
Is it important for patients to be able to negotiate over these kinds of things in order to be independent?
Absolutely.
Now, I want to ask you to assume that Mrs. Harris was not supposed to be on the walking track the day she fell without supervision. Do you have an opinion whether that rug on or near the track at the clinic was a breach of professional standard of care applicable to therapists?
If patients are supervised by a therapist, there should be no issues in that situation.
And why is that?
Because the therapist would be there to ensure that the patient safely negotiates the obstacle that is present.
Now, you reviewed the therapy notes, correct?
Yes.
You reviewed the MD Anderson notes, is that correct?
Yes.
You reviewed virtually all the clinical records, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Do you have an opinion whether the therapist at St. Mary Medical Center accurately identified and documented Mrs. Harris' medical history of deficits?
I see nothing that would lead me to believe there was any inaccuracies within the documentation.
So how would you describe her condition as of October 1, 2009?
Leading up to that point, her right leg continued to be very weak. She seemed to fatigue quickly, and I would say she was still at a very high risk for falls at that time.
Can you put up, please, Sashi Grombat's report of September 25th? I lost the page, I guess. Bear with me, sir, for just a second. Okay. The page is open. Can we have page 174? Yeah. Can you put that one up there? I was doing pretty well. I hadn't lost the page till today. 174? I want the text and measure. Okay. Sir, did you look at Mr. Brombaught's evaluation from September 22, 2009?
Yes.
You looked at that entire record?
Yes.
You agree that that seems to be the last evaluation of the patient before she fell about a week later?
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
I'd like to direct your attention, for the benefit of the jury, this is page 174 of the answer. I'd like to direct your attention to the area marked tests and measures. Can you enlarge that one? Okay. Sir, the jury has heard testimony from Mrs. Harris that she thought by the point in time at which she fell, she was just doing wonderfully and she could see light at the end of the tunnel, I think was her expression. She thought she was getting to the point where she wouldn't need an assistive device. Now, with that testimony in mind, can you explain to the jury what those lower extremity strength numbers mean?
Basically, that is a technique we use called manual muscle testing, where you grade muscle strength on a score of 0 to 5. 0 being no active muscle contraction, and 5 being normal strength. So anytime you see zeros, what that is telling you is there's no active muscle contraction. You can't even see, the patient cannot produce movement into that direction. You don't even see a tendon move or twitch. You don't see the muscle contract. There's no contraction at all.
So when the first thing I see there is right lower extremity grossly 2 of 5. You see that?
Yes.
What's that mean?
That means basically a 3 out of 5 means the patient can move the limb against gravity. So anything below that means you have to put the patient in a modified position in order to perform complete movement through the tested joint. So 2 out of 5 means that she does not have the strength to fully move the leg through the available range of motion.
Is that a deficit?
Very much so, yes.
Is that a significant deficit?
Yes.
Then she has hip flexion 3 minus of 5. You see that?
Yes.
What's that mean?
Basically the same thing, just get a little bit closer to being able to fully move move into that motion as far as you can.
Okay. Is that a deficit?
Yes.
Is that a significant deficit?
Yes.
What does knee flexion 2 of 5 mean?
Same thing, I mean, she cannot fully bend the knee through all of her range of motion without putting her into a position where she's not pulling her knee against gravity.
Is that a deficit?
Yes.
Is it a significant deficit?
Yes.
What does ankle dorsiflexion 0 of 5 mean?
That basically means that the muscle she uses to pull her foot up is not contracting at all. So that's the motion you use, the muscles you use to make sure your toes don't catch as you take a step, so you don't trip over your own foot. And in that situation, there's no active contraction of those muscles required to produce that movement.
That's a deficit, isn't it?
Yes.
Doesn't get much worse than that, does it? What does hip extension 2 plus of 5 mean?
Basically, she does not have the strength in the buttocks muscles to fully extend hip through range of motion. And where that comes into play is supporting herself in a standing position, supporting herself in walking, getting up from a chair. Hip extension is crucial in all those motions, and without adequate strength, she would not be able to support her weight through that lower extremity.
Now, she had knee extension of 4 plus 5, is that correct?
Yes.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah, I would consider that a deficit.
And what does that mean, knee extension?
That's basically keeping your knee out straight, so it's the big muscle in the front of your thighs that you'd be testing there.
And then she had ankle plantar flexion 0 of 5, correct?
Yes.
What's that?
That's basically testing the strength of your calf muscles to push off through your foot as you're taking a step and pushing through the ball of your foot to propel yourself forward.
Is that a deficit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And it's significant?
Yes, it doesn't get any worse than 0.
Okay. Then finally, she has hip abduction 3 minus of 5. You see that?
Yes.
What's that?
That hip abduction is bringing the leg back towards the body, so it's the inner thigh muscles. And 3 minus again just means you cannot move through the full range of motion that is available.
Now, in your opinion, did Mrs. Harris have deficits on September 22, 2009 that put her at risk of fall?
Yes, very significant deficits.
So you would characterize them as significant deficits?
Yes.
If Mrs. Harris used her right leg beyond its limits of endurance that day by walking too much, or she was having a bad day and was tired, what would you expect would happen with that leg?
All of the notes seem to indicate that she had a long-standing issue with fatigue with that leg. As the leg fatigued, she has difficulty moving, and she would have difficulty picking up and advancing it without dragging the floor. And there were even, in the information I reviewed, information discussing falls that had previously happened because of lower extremity weakness.
Based on your clinical experience as a therapist, sir, Mrs. Harris' right leg were to fail due to fatigue and endurance issues, which direction would you expect her to fall?
If the right leg were to give out, I would expect her to fall towards the right side.
Have you had patients fall in therapy?
Rarely. It's been years.
Okay. Now, you read Mrs. Harris' deposition, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you familiarize yourself with her description of the fall on
Yes.
Based on that description of her fall and your knowledge of her deficit at the time, do you have an opinion as to why Mrs. Harris fell?
It seems very much likely that the right leg could have given out. She had completed a full lap with obvious strength deficit she had in that leg. As she fatigued as she finished that last lap, it's very possible that leg could have given out, causing her to fall to the right side and land on her right hip.
Do you believe that to be more probably true than not?
More probably, yes.
Okay. You're familiar with her claim that she caught her cane on a rug?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain why the use of the cane in the left hand is appropriate to support the dysfunction of the right leg?
As you walk with the cane, we try to replicate a normal gait pattern as much as possible. So when you walk normally, as your right foot steps forward, your left arm swings. So your arm swing is opposite of your leg swing, basically. So by putting the cane in the opposite hand, you can duplicate a normal gait pattern, which is the ultimate goal for return patients to most normal status we can get into. So as the right foot steps forward, the right leg is the weaker leg. As weight is put through the right leg, the cane is down on the left side to provide a little extra support while that leg is bearing the full weight of the body.
The jury heard testimony that she had a forward trunk flexion when ambulated by the assistant device,
Yes.
but she didn't have it with the cane.
Okay.
What's the significance of that to you in terms of your opinion on how she fell?
Well, you take the cane away, the weight would shift forward into that forward trunk flexion, throwing her center of gravity ahead of her, which could likely cause a forward fall.
If she caught the cane on the left-hand corner of the rug as she was ambulating forward, based on your experience, what direction do you think she would fall?
I would expect a forward fall based on the momentum of her forward motion and her forward posture.
If she had a cane in her left hand which she was using to correct forward trunk flexion, would you expect any rotation in her trunk and falling as a result of that?
It is likely that as she fell forward, the cane would catch, possibly causing her body to rotate.
In which direction?
It's hard to say exactly, but I would say if the cane catches, her body lurches forward, most likely she would fall onto the left side.
Sir, are your opinions and conclusions that you testified today based upon reasonable professional probability?
Yes.
I have no further questions for you, sir. Mr. Servant.
Mr. Silver, why don't we take 10 minutes before you begin your cross-examination, give the jury a little break.
Sure.
We'll take a 10-minute recess, ladies and gentlemen.